So, Brian, I've got some news. I'm going to Graceland.
You are?
There's the 30th anniversary celebration happening for Twin Peaks 30 at Graceland on April 3rd, that weekend. They're doing the whole weekend of just Twin Peaks. I'm sure everybody who's listened to the show knows about it. Really, David Lynch, Showtime, is kind of taking over the special event. And my wife saw it on Facebook and said, you should go. And my birthday is April 1st, so it's happening. I'm going.
Happening. And I mean, not only will you be there representing Twin Peaks Unwrapped, but a lot of people from the show, Machen Amick, Donna Ashbrook, Chrysta Bell, Sherilyn Fenn, many more are all going to be at this event.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I've never met Michael Horse in person. I've never met Machen Amick in person. But they're also going to be doing VR. They're going to have the VR experience.
Very cool.
Very cool. And
Yeah.
I think there's going to be there's going to be probably some panels and events and cherry pie and coffee. So I'm really excited. I hope that people that are listening, that some of you guys can attend as well. It's going to be really special.
And tickets for the 30th anniversary celebration are still on sale, and fans can visit www.graceland.com/Twin Peaks for more information.
It was Laura, living in my dreams. It was Laura. The glow was life. Her smile was to say, it was all right to cry. The woods was our sadness. The dance was her calling. It was Laura. And she came to kiss me goodbye.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Ben.
Well, we've got another community rewatch, and we have both John Thorne and Richie English on the show.
Hi, I'm Francine the Lucid Dream as Blackie O'Reilly, Shelley Johnson, Sarah Palmer, Norma Jennings, 52 Pickup Girl, Lucy Moran, and Maddie Ferguson.
Hi, I'm Ceedie Edie as Audrey Horne, Donna Hayward, and Maddie Ferguson.
Hi, I'm Schaefer the Dark Lord as Benjamin Horne, Jerry Horne, Pete Martell, Sheriff Harry S. Truman, Deputy Tommy Hawk Hill, Deputy Andy Brennan, Big Ed Hurley, Hank Jennings, Special Agent Dale Cooper, Special Agent Albert Rosenfield, James Hurley, Doc Hayward, Dr. Lawrence Jacoby, and Leland Palmer. And we are
The Pink Room Burlesque.
Like, we have the first season where David Lynch does the pilot and he does one episode, and then all of a sudden he comes back in the second season and he's doing 3 hours of Twin Peaks. Watching all this, you can definitely see that David Lynch was probably filming all this at the same time, especially when it comes to the hospital. I mean, I think there's the hospital in all 3 of these hours.
Right, you're right.
I think that is the case. I think that Lynch was there and essentially shot the scripts for the first and second season 2 episodes back to back, and was probably able to shoot all the hospital scenes at once.
Yeah, makes sense.
Make it easy.
John, what do you remember about watching the season premiere of the second season, and you got Cooper on the floor, and you got a waiter coming in, and
Wow. I think like everyone, we were all a little startled that it moved so slowly. It doesn't really move that slowly. It's just the anticipation after 4 months to waiting to find out what had happened to Cooper. We knew he'd been shot. We knew that there were like 7 or 8 cliffhangers waiting out there to continue or to be resolved or find out what happened. And then we get this long scene where the very slow moving waiter comes in and so Lynch is teasing us. In some ways, I guess frustrating, even though I don't find it frustrating now. I think it's wonderful, but at the time we were all eager. Lynch was telling us, be patient, just wait. so that I do remember that, just sort of on edge and being forced to kind of to wait for them to tell it in their style.
yeah, definitely. And Richie, what do you think about this episode?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought this up because I was thinking about this earlier today. This is one of these scenes where I would show it to people who purportedly hate David Lynch. It's just one of those scenes where you can sort of go point by point down the line and show on like a variety of different levels why he's such a genius. And it's it has to do with the fact that by about the third time the waiter pops his head back into the room, I think we all were kind of like squeezing our chairs. And just, it started getting like really annoying. And then it just became like grotesque. Like, and that's the thing with David Lynch, is that, people talk about black humor with him. There's not a color or shade to explain his humor. It's you never quite know if you should be laughing. And a lot of times I find myself laughing just because I've been startled or because I'm getting agitated or upset. And this was the iconic scene for that. For me personally, it's very tense.
Yeah.
Right. It's you bring up a good point, Richie. You're laughing almost when you're uncomfortable. Ben and myself saw Firewalk with Me in the theater, and we mentioned this before, so I won't go on about it. But there was a couple moments in that movie that are unsettling, but the crowd laughed at it.
Yeah, it's like we're dealing with abuse.
Yeah, and you see Leland peeking out the window as James and Laura drives away on the motorcycle, and we just see this creepy Leland face. Everybody laughs, and it was
it's just like, what else can you do?
Yeah,
like there's something that's like when I'm glad you brought that up, because when you see that face in that moment, immediately, and we all know Lynch knew this. And it's just staggering because he knows that we know in that moment that this guy is molesting his daughter. Like it's and suddenly it all hammers home, especially if you were a fan of the series and you went and seen that movie. And we all kind of knew it was happening, but it just makes such a hard left so quickly that all you can do is kind of blow out laughing. I mean, what's the other reaction?
Right.
I can't really think of one.
Just to go back to the waiter scene real quick, I do think it is a humorous scene. I think it is a funny scene. I think it was in some ways intended to be funny.
Yeah.
It's just not necessarily funny the first time. And
Exactly.
and it's not like it's serious or it's confusing or it's frustrating.
It's yeah.
And I actually found that same thing happened to me. As I watched the waiter scene in subsequent viewings, I find it funny and I laugh at it. It certainly did back in the day, and that also happened to me with season 3. The scenes in the Roadhouse when the various unknown characters would be having these fragmentary conversations that didn't connect to anything else. They were frustrating because they didn't connect to anything else, and we were wanting to find out what was going to happen. And then in subsequent viewings, I'd sit down there and I'd watch these characters talking about their relationships, and Trick is out on parole or whatever, and I find those scenes hilarious. I find them just absolutely entertaining and funny, and they're basically comic relief. So I think Lynch has a way of doing that with some of these kinds of sequences, which on the first viewing don't seem that funny. You have to process them, but once you kind of know what's going to happen and you can slow down and now appreciate it for what it is, the humor comes out a lot more.
Yeah.
totally agree.
At this point, it seems like Mark Frost and David Lynch know that they have to reveal who the killer is, and it's interesting that we're now really heading into Supernatural, the giant and this vision, and giving clues and saying this is how you're going to solve the mystery of Laura Palmer. How is that as a structure, you think, John, for you? Like, is that they decided to go in this supernatural elements, and that's how we're going to wrap up the mystery?
Yeah, this is definitely an important point to make. It may be the most important point to make about this episode, which is really a crucial hinge in the entire narrative of Twin Peaks. And I've written about it before. This is the episode that essentially puts us squarely in the supernatural realm. Mm-hmm. You can look at the first season, the first 7 or 8 episodes, however many hours it is. And while there are some hints at a supernatural element, it's pretty much a murder mystery with suspects and melodrama and, these various things. But then we get to the beginning of season 2, and we have the giant appear and give Cooper these cryptic clues. Cooper says, "Where are you from?" And the giant says, "The question is, where are you now?" Or something to that effect. Also, we get a renewed emphasis on Bob. We knew there was a character called Bob, but he was really kind of this marginal figure in season 1. And now in this episode, Bob is emphasized, certainly by the end of the episode he is, as being essentially the killer. What happens in this episode is the question becomes less about who killed Laura Palmer, and the new question becomes who is Bob. And so you've got this supernatural element, really take center stage, and it will drive the rest of the narrative for this season, for Fire Walk with Me, and for season 3. And it all kind of has some of its origin here. I mean, the dream sequence that Cooper has was really simply just a dream in season 1. Well, now we begin to wonder if, he was contacting beings from another world. This is the episode that shifts it into a whole new territory.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you kind of said that really brilliantly.
That's what John does. I mean, that's why he is the godfather of Twin Peaks.
He hates that.
He loves it.
Yeah, perfect thesis encapsulation there. I'm wrapping my head around all that right now. And then,
He does that to all of us here.
Yeah.
He does. Oh, man.
I've only been, it's only been 30 years of thinking about it. That's all.
I do like that whole thing of Giant saying, where have you gone? And stuff like that. And I used to think, is that the White Lodge? I mean, have you actually been taken out of? And even with season 3 now, you have the idea of vortexes and that you can go to other places. And
do you get the sense that those vortices are kind of sinister, frowned upon? I think about those. I mean, especially the scene when Gordon, is facing down that vortex, and Albert kind of, saves him from it. But I just remember thinking, I think these are dangerous or, illicit somehow.
I'd just be concerned, how do you get back out?
Once you get in.
You get in, how do you get out? I mean,
How do you get out?
Was there a vortex above Andy went into the woods and tornado?
Yes.
Yeah, there was.
You could basically argue that one potentially, depending on where you are physically in this realm, one vortex or a number of vortices may put you into the Dutchman's, Black Lodge, bad place, or whatever you want to call it, versus the one which is in the woods. And Andy ends up with the Giant, which is, perhaps arguably a good place. So it depends on, which vortex you get sucked into. And it's actually an interesting point, because the Giant does say to Cooper, where have you gone? And you could almost argue that the same thing that happened to Andy is happening to Cooper. And actually, I know it's reversed. That Andy gets brought to the realm of the firemen and given this information, and you could say in a way they were doing that in this opening episode of season 2, is that Cooper had visited the realm of the firemen, and of course then we called him the Giant, so the Giant didn't come to him. Cooper went to the Giant. I mean, certainly in retrospect now we can make that argument.
Right.
Definitely.
Right.
At the very end of this episode, the Giant visits Cooper again, and it's interesting. He does look like he has almost a golden sphere.
He does. He shoots it at him.
Very interesting to do a freeze frame on that scene where the Giant is standing there. You got the chandelier in the room hanging down around him. You've got this interesting composition that Lynch did. That it does sort of give him an otherworldly feel.
Interior, One-Eyed Jack's bedroom, night. Close on Audrey's eye, peering out from between the curtains, draped around the 4-poster in her room. Audrey stands on the bed. There are 2 masks on the wall above the headboard. Ben Horne enters the room, sees movement behind the curtains. Knock, knock. Knock, knock. Changing her voice.
Who's there?
The big bad wolf.
Go away.
Interesting. Come on, let's have a look at you.
I'm shy.
Didn't you know? Everybody's shy. Here at One-Eyed Jack's, it's a transitory condition and an occupational handicap. He tries to pry the curtain apart for a look. She snaps it shut. He takes out a cigar. Having been through this before, he falls back on technique. But consider, your first night in a new place. New surroundings, new people.
New wardrobe.
Naturally, you are full of questions, anxieties. You're wondering, what's expected of me? How will I be received? Will they like me? I'm right, aren't I?
Yes.
Ben patrols the perimeter, toying with the curtains as she moves with him, defending her translucent barrier, trying to anticipate his angle of attack. Let's examine these feelings, shall we? What are they, if not the natural, emotional processes of any living, breathing person who finds herself thrust into new circumstances?
Could you repeat the question?
You're nervous. You're shy. You're frightened. Of course you are. How exactly new to all this are you?
You might say brand new.
The thought really cheers him. Really?
For instance, if I was a bar of soap, I'd still be wrapped in my package.
Enthusiasm swells. All right, fine. Now I have to see you. He puts his cigar in his mouth, tries to open the curtain again. She thwarts him. He thrusts a hand inside. She slaps it away. A vixen! What's your name?
Queen of Diamonds.
No, no, no. Your real name.
I'm not supposed to tell.
Did they tell you who I was?
The owner?
That's right. Tell me your name.
You wouldn't believe me.
I'm a liberal thinker.
Prudence.
Prudence?
I think you should go.
Do you, Prudence?
Yes, I do. I really do.
All right. She listens cautiously. Ben walks to the door, opens and closes it, tiptoes back into the room, toward the bed. He triumphantly throws the curtains open. Got you! She's hiding under the covers, a conspicuous lump. Ben advances. I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house down. He yanks the covers away. She's revealed. A mask covers her features. Aren't you something? He advances further. She retreats. He reaches for her. She slaps his hands away, grabs a pillow and whacks him across the head. He laughs. She's backed against the wall. He reaches for her mask. Please, I have to see you. His hand reaches the mask. An urgent knock at the door. Ben hesitates. Another knock. Ben, it's Jer. Brother Ben, we've got a situation. So have I. Ben, it's the MILL, and we got a big SNAG. Ring a bell? Alas, I do have a situation.
Gee, that's too bad.
All business, rising, putting on a coat. I like you. You know how to interest a man. That's half the battle. You've got quite a future in front of you.
That's what everyone keeps telling me.
Ben, I'm gonna count to 3. Coming, Jer. Straightens his tie, checks the mirror. Prudence, I'm leaving now. But I'm going to get myself back up here to see you right away. And next time, we'll play a different game. I'll make the rules. A fun game. You'll like it. Everybody wins. He drops some money on the table, blows her a kiss, and blows out of the room. Audrey lowers the mask. She's laughing silently, tears running down her face, close to the edge.
You know, in the show, Ben calls her Prudence. I think fans just think that's some weird name he made up. And he learned from the script that is what Audrey is calling herself. If I was a bar of soap, I'd still be wrapped in my package. And like some of this dialogue, I don't know if I buy it. I mean, maybe the actors would have sold it, but it's like, it's a little, it's
kind of sleazy.
Maybe, I don't know.
You wonder if because Lynch was directing, whether it was even shot. It's possible that he was just like, no, I'm not even going to do that.
Right.
It was scripted, but
I agree.
You know, and it's important to know. We can note it a little later. There's a scene in here that's in the televised version that's not in the script, and I think Lynch was, as Lynch will do, molding it to the way he felt was. Best suited for the story and for the show, and it's quite possible that he's just like, I'm not even going to bother with that, or as is often the case, these scenes are just a little too long and they need to edit it down for time, so they cut the introductory section of it off and or just shorten the exchange between Ben and Audrey. Hard to say what the decision making process there was, whether or not it was shot to begin with or whether or not they just edited it out.
Interior, Blackie's office, night. Ben and Jerry enter Blackie's office. Blackie sits behind her desk, looking worn and haggard. She has the shakes. How many blips are we dealing with? 2 blips. Blip number 1, they contain the fire in the drying sheds. It didn't spread to the processing plant, just the plywood building, not the main plant. Manageable. What's blip number 2? Leo the lips in the hospital. As in morgue, that's a big N-O. Ben chews on that. Turns to Blackie. Keep an eye on that new girl. She didn't come across. That sounds like a job for Jerry Horn. Taking off his coat, Jerry starts for the door. Ben grabs him by the collar. Blackie, you're looking a little worse for wear. She shoots him a poisonous look. He takes a packet from his pocket. Would you like to fix yourself a cocktail? Or would you rather just say no?
Bastard.
What's that, Blackie? Humbling herself.
Please.
And you used to be so pretty. Ben signals to Jerry, who exits. Ben moves to the door.
Please.
He stops, looks at her. She's trembling.
Pretty please?
Ben tosses the packet onto the desk, shakes his head and exits. Blackie looks at the packet, opens a drawer, plus other drug paraphernalia. Takes out a length of rubber tubing and sets it on the desk.
You don't need 2 scenes like this back to back.
This is a scene where Ben does say to Blackie, we have a problem with this new girl. And we learn in another episode, Blackie says to Audrey that, the owner wasn't very happy with you. And I guess you don't really need to actually witness Ben and Blackie's...
Exterior, mill, dawn. Paramedics wheel Pete Martell out of the mill, his face covered with an oxygen mask. They load Pete into the back of an ambulance. Shelley Johnson is already inside on another gurney, also taking oxygen. Sheriff Truman stands by the ambulance doors. Pete takes Truman's hand, partially lifts off his mask. Catherine? Not yet, Pete. They look at each other. Pete coughs. They readjust his mask, slide the gurney in, close the doors. The siren starts up. The ambulance drives off. Truman moves away and is joined by Deputy Hawk. Josie's not at Blue Pine. She's not at the office. Keep looking. Harry, we've looked everywhere. Keep looking. Deputy Andy lopes up to them. Andy, where the hell is Cooper? It's the strangest thing. I was talking to him, and he put the phone down and walked away, and it sounded like somebody was banging real loud on the door. And then I heard a sound like somebody falling down, and then about a minute went by, and somebody hung up the phone. Hawk and Truman look at each other.
That's Schaefer, though. How many characters does he play here? He plays Hawk, Truman, Andy. I mean, that is unbelievable.
And I have to say, the Truman, he really gives Truman some oomph. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a scene you don't need, but it's interesting to see that this is what Andy does when he gets off the phone with Cooper. He's like, I don't know, he just he heard a thump and he hung up, and like he's confused by the whole thing. It's like, you didn't realize it was a gunshot?
Yeah, I mean, this is Andy,
I mean, those editing choices are made because they have to fit those commercials in. It has to be this length. A lot of times, I think the TV writers today, and certainly then, wrote with some redundancy there. We have a little extra, and we can cut it if we need to. So they had some room to play to make it, make a scene a little longer or a little shorter, and not take the essential content of it out, so that they could make that exact time that they needed to do. I'm sure Frost was extremely aware of that kind of thing when they're scripting these, and certainly Harley Payton. They knew we have to give ourselves a little wiggle room, so some of these scenes run a little long, and we know we can cut them down and still keep the content exactly what we want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree.
John, did you have anything to say about Leland and his hair turning white?
Well, I think by the time they got to shooting this episode, they had committed, at least Lynch and Frost, and I don't know how many other people knew. We all know it's very few. They had committed to Leland being essentially, he was going to be the killer. And so, they had laid the groundwork. They knew how it was going to play out until the reveal that Leland was going to be revealed as Bob. And so this is just the first clue and, positioning of Leland as this character. We can assemble these clues as we go along. And so something, odd has transformed in Leland. It's sort of a hint that he's not what he appears to be. So I think that was the intent there, was to essentially they wanted to make it look like Leland was having a nervous breakdown, or he was changing. He was having these issues, but it was all part of this other subplot that was going to get revealed, that he was in fact possessed by some other demonic force, and that contributed to why he was looking and behaving the way he was.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody think that Leland looked almost more aged when he had the shock of white hair than he did in his reappearance in season 3? Like he looked older when his hair went like completely white than he actually looked for me in The Return.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I can see that. With the white hair makes you look old.
And in The Return, he didn't have the white hair, right?
No.
Right.
He also didn't have it. When in the finale, though, in episode 29, he didn't have white hair either, right? He was back to his brownish hair.
Yeah, he had.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think that just Ray Wise has those features, which, 25 years, he still looks, in some way ageless. It's hard to really pin an age on Ray Wise. He's just got that wonderful face that doesn't age.
Yeah.
A great thing to have, I guess.
Interior hospital room, day. Truman looks in on Ed Hurley, sitting by the bedside of the unconscious Nadine, holding her hand, watching her with fear and devotion, trying to will her back. Truman respectfully withdraws before Ed realizes he's there. Truman enters another room, where a nurse is tending to Shelley, lying quietly in bed, pale, exhausted, coughing gently every now and then. Truman nods to the nurse, who exits. Truman sits by the edge of the bed. Shelley manages a weak smile. Hi, Shelley.
Hi. Hope you don't mind if I don't get you coffee.
Starts to cough. He pats her arm.
Leo know I'm here?
Shelley sees the look on his face.
What? What?
Leo was shot last night. He's here in the hospital.
Oh my God.
It's bad. You should know there's a chance he may not make it.
Oh my God. What happened?
We don't know. We found him at your house about an hour ago.
At our house?
Truman nods. Shelley's thinking, eyes darting around, exploring the possibilities. Shelley, we're gonna need to ask you some questions. She nods. Can you tell me what you were doing at the mill? Tears come to Shelley's eyes.
Would it be okay if maybe we could talk a little later? It's just, with Leo.
She starts to cry. Truman pats her on the shoulder. I understand. You rest up for a while. I'll be back to see you.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Truman rises, exits. Shelley tries to put the pieces together, under her breath, terrified.
Bobby, help me.
Interior, hospital corridor, day. Truman exits Shelley's room, sees Ed coming out of Nadine's room. They approach. Ed shrugs, a heartbreaking look of helplessness. Truman gives him a hug. I'm sorry. She's always been a fighter. I'm betting on her. I'd lay money on that myself. I should have been with her. This wouldn't have happened. You can't blame yourself. But I do, you see. That's the whole problem. Pulling himself back. Have you seen James? He ought to know. I've been trying to get a hold of him. Truman decides not to complicate Ed's emotional state. Let me take care of that for you. Thanks, Harry. Emotions swelling again. She knows I'm there. She squeezes my hand when I talk to her. She can hear me. Course she can, Ed. You stay with her. You'll bring her back. Ed pats him on the back, nods, goes back in as Truman moves off.
The Shelley thing is weird because I don't even think she's not even met up with Bobby yet to come up with a scheme to basically fake that she still loves Leo, to like that whole scheme that they're not even there yet. So
No.
it's funny how like she still seems to be pretending that she is sad for Leo. The reason she's in the hospital is because Leo tied her up and left her for dead in the mill.
Right.
So it's like if they were able to figure out that Leo was the one that did the mill, wouldn't they be like, Shelley, why aren't you more upset that he tried to kill you? I mean, so the whole thing doesn't quite make much sense, really.
Yep.
Interior, Palmer living room, day. Sarah Palmer and Maddie Ferguson are having coffee, both lost in private thought.
I had the strangest dream last night.
About Laura?
I'm not sure. Maybe. I was in a desert. It was hot and dry. There was some kind of animal with me. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it breathing on me.
What kind of animal?
A big cat. I think it was gray. I could see its eyes, yellow and red. Then we were in the woods. It was very dark. I woke up and the window was open. There was a cold wind blowing through the room.
With this unseen dialogue, I feel it's even more clear that Bob is going after Maddie. Like, I think more clear, and maybe they decided they didn't want the audience to start thinking about Bob attacking her. Maybe they wanted to keep it more secret and, just surprise us with her death. But it seems, I mean, she's clearly saying the window's open and the blowing of the room, and so it seems to me that maybe while she's sleeping, Bob is like standing over her or something. And when I say Bob, Leland, I mean,
yeah, but this whole big cat thing is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's like a metaphor for something that's bad, that's evil, that's scary. So one of the next scenes in the show is, we're at Leo's house and they're looking for evidence, and you have Andy hitting his with the plywood, and then Albert coming in, and I think it's a really funny scene.
This scene just like it's a lesson in how to make something awkward by extending it.
Yeah,
and that's a big part of David's repertoire, I think. It's also why his stuff is just so unspeakably beautiful as well. But after about 10 seconds of seeing this, I don't know if you had a reaction similar to the one that I had, but I started getting like nervy a little bit. Like I started to feel antsy.
Yeah. I mean, I think Lynch can do that.
Yeah, I feel bad for Andy because he's like dancing around. He's got blood coming off his nose.
I think the blood is
in like
great,
a dead squat position too,
Yes.
So, I mean, can you imagine how hard that must be to like walk for however long? And David's getting like, I'm sure he didn't just shoot that once,
Yeah.
Well, maybe he did. He'll be like he's known for one takes too.
I can see Lynch going lower, walk lower, longer.
And the voice, like, no. Get low to the ground, like that. Sacrifice the body.
Yeah.
Interior, Double R Diner, kitchen, day. A small bottle of ammonia or some light chemical is opened. Hank Jennings lets the fumes from the bottle drift up into his face. He inhales. His eyes redden and start to tear. He replaces the bottle top and hides the bottle as Norma Jennings enters the kitchen. She's not in uniform this morning. Hank lets her catch a glimpse of him before turning away.
Hank?
Hank grabs a broom and starts to sweep up, trying to hide his tears. Yeah, hi.
What is it?
Nothing. Fine. She regards him. Trust still an issue, but today perhaps slightly more on the fence, waiting him out.
Uh-huh.
I can't stop thinking of little Shelley in that burning mill. And then as if that's not bad enough, she comes out of it to find Leo's been shot? I don't know. I mean, I've done some rotten things in my life. I don't pretend to be any saint. I've paid for it, but why do bad things happen to good people? It just doesn't seem fair. Tries to lighten up. Anyway.
I'm just on my way over to see her.
Yeah, listen, I was gonna send her some flowers. Takes out some cash. Maybe you could... She takes the money.
That's a nice thought.
Sometimes I guess it is the thought that counts.
She'll get through this. She's tougher than she looks.
Yeah. Kinda reminds me of somebody. A wistful grin for her benefit. She half smiles, pockets the money, starts out.
She likes snapdragons.
He's trying to build an alibi with Norma to be like, I had nothing to do with this. My hands are clean. Look at the tears in my eye. I'm sincere. but we know he's none of that.
I always think it's interesting. This isn't another episode where he just takes money out of the register. He's like, yeah, we should make this place look really nice. It's like, it's not your money. This is Norma's restaurant, and she's got to pay. She's got to figure out how to pay the bills. And it's so nice of you to just say, let's take out some money.
You're right. He just takes the money out willy-nilly, and she doesn't stop him. It's her place.
Right.
They are married, though.
I guess technically they are married, aren't they? They are still married.
But it's still her place.
Yeah. John, what is that? What's the scene that you really enjoy in this episode? Because there's so much happening.
I mean, I love it because it's directed by Lynch.
Amen.
If I were going to comment on the episode overall, obviously this episode is we talked about the supernatural element earlier, but this episode, it was sort of a reset in many respects. I mean, they had a plot line that they had done in the first season, but now they had to kind of, start over again, so to speak, because they were hoping that this would continue on through a full season 2 and maybe beyond. And so you see the beginnings of what will be a season-long arc. The idea when Cooper's at the beginning and he's laying on the floor and he's talking to Diane and he's saying, I have to keep the fear from, getting in. I mean, that essentially right there at the very beginning, in the very first scene, the entire theme of season 2 is laid out, which is fear versus love. Major Briggs much later in the season say, my greatest fear is that love is not enough. Fear and love open the doors, which is what we're going to find out much later. That love will open the door to the White Lodge and fear opens the door to the Black Lodge. That kernel of the entire storyline is laid out in the first 5 minutes of this episode. And they were kind of laying the groundwork for a season-long arc. And as a result of that, too, we get essentially the biggest mistake, the biggest error of the entire Twin Peaks narrative, the original series, in this episode. As they have to redefine the story, they tell us, about the blood types of the blood that they found on the note was AB negative. They had established that Jacques Renault's blood type was AB negative in the first season. And then in this episode, they established that, that blood was, Firewalk with Me was written in the blood and it was type AB negative. And none of the people have, Jock doesn't have it and Leland doesn't have it or whatever. Maybe Leland does. That's a huge mistake. They essentially forgot what they had established in season 1. And it may seem like a really minor thing, so what, overlooking it? Well, essentially, it basically says, well, Jacques the murderer.
Right.
By doing that. And it also is curious because the show is so meticulously made that an error like that really stands out, especially when you look at what happened in the first season where everything seemed so carefully constructed. This error was, I remember watching that when it came on, just going, wait a minute, what? I mean, this is a whole different reality now.
Right.
This isn't what we knew. There are a couple of other examples, I think, of the restructuring happening in this 2-hour premiere. Essentially, and in some ways, I think they were saying, if you didn't see season 1, you can start here. We're going to lay the entire story out for you. We're going to put the new clues in. We're going to kind of point it in a different direction, and you can start watching from now on and be part of the audience. So there's a lot of heavy lifting going on in this episode to prepare the story for season 2.
Yeah. It is funny they kind of restructure, but they really didn't restructure it well for new people. Like, if I went in and be like, there's some waiter, and all of a sudden there's a giant in the room, and like, what? And who are all these other characters? And it's like,
But back then you couldn't go back to watch season 1, so they're
Right,
letting a new audience in some
but it was
weird
not
way.
good. Maybe it's not the best introduction. Richie, I mean, one of the scenes I really liked, I wondered if you thought about it too, is like there's a great scene at the Double R where Major Briggs is talking to his son Bobby, and like, what do you think about that? That's one of my favorite scenes.
The scene
That he had a dream, and I think that he went to, I think it was a White House, and he opened the door, and there was his son right
his
there.
son smiling with, like, looking contented and satisfied.
Yeah.
And, I love that scene because I love how it unmanned Bobby, like, in that moment. It's just like he's perpetually going to be a little boy, with his daddy. But you know what that scene did for me? is it humanized the Major to such a degree that when I saw him reappear in episode 2 of The Return, just for that quick moment when he says Blue Rose,
Yeah.
there was something really elegiac about it, and just very funereal. I mean, like that. It really affected me, And then it showed Mr. C imprisoned. Yeah. You see the Major's head for a moment, before it makes its ascension, I guess. But I found that to be, just far more ethereal than it would have been had both those moments not been informed by the Double R Diner heart to heart.
He's seeing the future of Bobby, and he's got a good future. He's got a happy future.
And then we see that future
in season 3.
Yeah, and when his mom lets everybody in with the chair, Mrs. Briggs, and she talks to Bobby about their,
right. He's like, you weren't ready for this, but you've become such a better man now, and now you're ready to hear about what your father left you in some ways, a message. And
he goes full circle there. It's so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. That entire story arc is just such a priceless one.
Yeah, obviously, they were trying to establish Major Briggs as a more complicated character than they had in season 1, where he was sort of a hard-nosed, authoritarian type figure. They wanted to open him up, and they certainly do here in this scene and in later episodes too. There's a couple of interesting things to note. One is, just as you guys were talking about a moment ago, that scene really does inform a lot of what happens in season 3. We see Bobby as a sheriff's deputy, and apparently in a better place, even though he's had some hardships and some hurt in his life. He has obviously found a secure place in life, and he's on the side of quote unquote good. And that's all. That seed is planted here in the season 2 premiere. The other thing that's interesting to note, I interviewed Dana Ashbrook a long time ago, and he had indicated that the intent of the scene might have been different originally, that Bobby was going to react kind of snidely and kind of dismissively toward his father, and he Lynch basically told him, no, you're going to take this to heart. This is really going to move you. And in fact, it does. I mean, and Dan Ashbrook's performance in the scene is great. And it softens the character, and it enhances the character of Bobby, too, who will, throughout season 2, begin to become a more nuanced character and start to shift his life toward a better path. I mean, if you think about what Bobby's been through up to this point, he's killed a guy, he's been dealing drugs, he's a pretty bad guy. This is the moment where he changes, I think, and becomes a better person, and it stays in that direction. And Lynch knew that then. I think, he understood that that's what needed to happen with Bobby. It is in a very important scene, and it is one of the most moving scenes in all of Twin Peaks. It is a standout scene in this episode.
In the interview with Dana, he basically says, I think Mark Frost told him to play it one way, and then David Lynch told him to play it a different way.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Is that your?
That was from our interview.
Yeah, but isn't that interesting in a way that Mark Frost had a whole different way of going about it? And then you have the director who basically says, no, that's not how you should be acting, and you're going to be emotional.
Frost, he wasn't directing it; he was writing it, and so he didn't really quite maybe perceive how it would all play out. To Mark Frost's credit, he has acknowledged that scene as being one of his favorite scenes in Twin Peaks. So he recognizes the power of it as well, even though initially he may have. He may have seen it playing out a different way.
30 years ago, people across the country were glued to their televisions by this mysterious death of Laura Palmer. And this spring, April 3rd through the 5th, Twin Peaks fans can travel to Elvis Presley's Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee for a once-in-a-lifetime fan celebration. David Lynch and Mark Frost created a mystery horror drama series that has continued to amass a cult following even after its original series final in 1991, and its impact on pop culture is never ending.
The Twin Peaks 30th official fan celebration at Graceland, an unforgettable experience featuring Twin Peaks themed parties, screenings of fan favorite episodes, and the chance for fans to relive their favorite show moments with some of Twin Peaks' biggest stars. And of course, there will be tons of cherry pie and damn good coffee. Tickets for the 30th anniversary celebration are still on sale, and fans can visit www.graceland.com/Twin Peaks for more information.
Interior, One-Eyed Jack's bedroom, day. Audrey, alone in her room, sprawled on the bed playing solitaire. She hums. She cheats. A knock at the door. A 52 pickup girl enters.
Say, when do they put on the feed bag around here? I could eat a bear.
Kitchen's open 24 hours a day.
Yeah? My door isn't. There's no doorknob on my side.
That's for security.
Whose security?
All the new girls get this room first.
This is interesting.
All of them?
Until they trust you.
Then what happens?
The girl likes her and is friendly, but is also clearly operating under some other instructions.
Keep asking so many questions and you'll never find out.
They don't like you asking questions?
The girl gestures to be quiet, nods, points to a small screen in the wall. A speaker. Audrey nods, understanding.
I wouldn't normally be so curious, but Jack's is such a first-rate joint. I'd like to know more about how it's run.
This may be your chance to find out. Blackie would like to see you in her office.
Hey, great. What's your name?
Nancy.
Nancy, one more question. Don't your boobs start to hurt in this thing?
Pulls on her own bustier. Nancy covers her mouth to hide her laugh and nods. Interior, Blackie's office, day. Audrey enters. Blackie, fixed up, looking cool and steely, is getting a shoulder rub from one of the pickups. Another pickup is kneeling in front of her, rubbing her feet.
Hey, boss, what's up?
Lets that pass.
The owner was a little disappointed in your performance last night.
Oh? That's not what he told me.
He said you were withholding.
Okay, right away, here's my analysis of the guy. He's a big cheese. Girls are falling like ripe tomatoes every time he walks into a room. Hey, a steady diet of caviar would eventually kill you, right? I asked myself, what's this guy missing? Conquest. The thrill of victory.
So you turned tail and made him chase you?
So to speak. You know the guy, am I right?
Coolly assesses her, then...
Did you find him attractive?
Attractive? Yes, I wouldn't say he was my type exactly.
Blackie rises and insinuates her way right up to Audrey. She touches Audrey's cheek.
And who would you say is your type exactly?
Not you. No offense.
Blackie slaps her hard. Audrey raises her hand to slap back. Blackie catches her wrist.
Let's get one thing straight between us, princess.
Not flinching.
Okay.
Audrey hears the snick of a lock engaging. She looks down. Blackie's put a handcuff on her wrist.
When you work for me, everybody's your type, whether you like it or not.
They look at each other.
And Francine and CD, they're wonderful. They're doing a great job with the characters and stuff.
I love it.
Yeah. This script kind of introduces Nancy, who ends up being Blackie's sister. But she's introduced differently in the show. And it's interesting that she's a pickup girl in the script here. So I think they're still trying to figure out who Nancy's going to be.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if Nancy became a character that tried to... if we didn't go down the path of Audrey getting rescued by the boys... It would have been interesting if this Nancy girl tried to get Audrey out. Befriended her, and Audrey befriends her, tells her who she is, and maybe she learns the truth. Well, she kind of knows the truth anyway, but gets confirmed with Nancy, and Nancy's like, I can try to get you out of here. And maybe have a breakout.
That would be interesting.
Interior, Sheriff's Station, day. Cooper, shirt off, ribs heavily taped, sits on the conference table as Albert Rosenfield examines him, using a stethoscope. Albert's briefcase is open on the table. Agent Cooper, you wanted to see me? Have a seat, Andy. Andy sits. Albert packs up his briefcase. Andy, I wanted to have a brief chat about the events of yesterday. Okay. When an officer's involved in something like this, it can result in a great number of distractions in the workplace. Uh-huh. The thing to focus on is your daily routine. Cling to it. Let it become the tent pole around which you organize your waking life, hanging on every word. Okay. The job can provide the structure you need to survive, while body and mind are left free to heal the wounds our work occasionally, inevitably, inflicts. Starting to look confused. All right. Even if committed in the line of duty and in a timely and heroic fashion, the firing of our weapon, the shooting of another human being, no matter how villainous the individual may be, exacts a spiritual and emotional toll on the officer. Sees the light. Oh, clearing up the misunderstanding. I thought you were talking about me and Lucy. Cooper looks at him. At the door, Albert looks at Andy. Back at Cooper. Albert exits. Where do they keep his water dish? Albert exits past Lucy. At the coffee station.
Welcome back.
Takes her coffee cup. For me? You shouldn't have.
Some classic Andy and some Albert.
And Cooper, I mean, I like the whole dialogue of Cooper.
And then Andy's like thinking he's talking about Lucy, which is even funnier.
I mean, that's always the comical with Andy and
Yeah.
Lucy, right? There's always some kind of confusion on something.
And I have to say, Schaefer Dark Lord does an amazing Andy.
To witness him in uniform at the Pink Room burlesque, it's great. It's so good.
Yeah, and then the fact that he just did all the guys' voices in that little bit is just pretty awesome.
It is something else.
Interior, interrogation room, day. James Hurley sits across from Sheriff Truman.
Uncle Ed know I'm in here? I haven't told him yet. Nadine took an overdose of pills last night. She's in the hospital. Ed's with her. I didn't want to tell him about this. She gonna be all right? They don't know yet. Poor Nadine. James, if there's anything else you want to tell me, this would be a good time.
Thinks, nods.
Laura talks on her tape about a mystery man. The red Corvette. Leo Johnson. I think it's somebody else. Not Jacques Renault either. Who? I never put it together until I heard the tape, where she said this guy can really light my fire. She said something once about a friend of her father's. Somebody she'd known since she was a kid. She said this guy was really into fire. What did she mean by that? I don't know. Laura said a lot of nutty stuff. Most of the time it went right by you.
Boy, that James Hurley.
Always getting himself into trouble. I actually hate this in a lot of shows. They kind of just like are recapping what's happening around the show or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you know that so-and-so is... I've seen some shows that drive me crazy where the whole show is almost... just people saying, I just saw so-and-so, they're doing this. And then somebody else would go there, I saw so-and-so, they're doing this. And it's just like, I don't need all that. Just get into the story.
That's bad writing.
Yeah, it's bad writing and
Yeah.
stuff. So I don't think we need to say like, oh, what's going on with Nadine? It's like, well, we've witnessed it. We've seen it in the hospital. We know she's got an overdose.
Yeah, storytelling, the best storytelling is show me, don't tell me.
Yep.
And I think it was good they got rid of this scene, even though you get to hear... James. No, this scene wasn't good. I don't know why I even said that. It's not a good scene at all.
You wanted more James. Is that what you're saying?
I was not saying that.
Interior, hospital room, day. Cooper and Truman enter. Dr. Jacoby is lying in bed, hooked up to various monitors, but sitting up, rested, alert. Doc Hayward is seated by his bedside. He rises. Cooper takes his seat. Jacoby notices Cooper moving slowly.
What happened to you? I'll see about some coffee.
Thanks, Doc. Cooper and Truman take seats beside Jacoby's bed. Dr. Jacoby, I know you've been through quite a bit in the last 24 hours. So have I. I don't want to pussyfoot around with you anymore, or see any more magic tricks, or hear any more psychological mumbo-jumbo. I want you to tell me how you came into possession of this. Cooper reveals the half-a-heart necklace. Jacoby is saddened seeing it, holds it gently in his hands.
Shall I start at the beginning?
That's as good a place as any.
Laura started coming to see me 9 months ago, on her own. Picked my name out of the phone book. I thought, what in the world could be troubling such a bright, pretty girl?
And?
Laura was, in essence, living a double life. Two people, self-divided, and those two selves were literally at war. A war of attrition. And the part of her that was good and loving was gradually losing ground.
Why?
Because the other self was stronger. The last time I saw her, 2 days before her death, it seemed to me she had reached a kind of peace within herself. I now believe what she had in fact arrived at was a decision to end her life. Suicide?
She didn't kill herself.
No. She allowed herself to be killed. I don't understand. She had reached a point where her good self believed that death was the only way to prevent the other side from complete domination. Death, in this sense, represented a kind of victory. Good Lord. Cooper, alert, moving him along. The necklace. As I told you, the night after she died, I followed a man in a red Corvette. Leo Johnson. Correct. He eluded me near the old Sawmill Road. As I sat there, cursing my lack of horsepower, a motorcycle drove by. James and Donna, which I discovered after following them, on foot into the woods. They spoke intently for a while. I couldn't hear them. Then they buried something in the ground and drove away. Unable to quench my curiosity, I dug down and found the necklace. I had seen it around Laura's neck many times. Perhaps ill-advisedly, I took it as a keepsake. Tears in his eyes, looking at the necklace in his hand. This was her, you see. The necklace. A divided heart.
So a lot of this was in the show.
Yeah.
But I do like this idea of the divided heart. Jacoby is trying to say that like she was at war with herself. That there was a good side of her and there was a bad side of her, and the bad side of her was winning.
Yeah.
And this episode, there was so much going on. There was no time. Like you had to move quicker than this. You didn't have time to just hang out with Jacoby and
him explain everything to you.
Yeah,
Schaefer, he nails it again. I love how this Truman sounds like Batman.
I'm Batman.
Yeah, he says Truman's very Batman.
I'm Truman.
I'm Truman.
Interior, Palmer House, night. Sarah and Leland are dressed for an evening out. Leland is deftly spinning Sarah around the room with a few light dance steps, humming some public domain tune. Sarah is smiling and enjoying it in spite of herself. Maddie and Donna watch from the doorway to the room. Leland finishes the dance. Come on, doll, let's paint the town. Sarah, not complaining.
Leland, I don't know what's gotten into you.
That old black magic's got me in its spell.
Something has, that much is for sure.
Girls, you should have seen Sarah dance. We used to win all the dance contests down at the Grange Hall. The other couples would see us coming and just walk off the floor.
Leland.
It's true. Isn't it true?
We won't be late.
Say hi to the Haywards for me.
I'll probably see you over there.
Leland gives Maddie a kiss, dances Sarah through the archway toward the front door, humming another tune. Donna breaking out the smokes.
I half expected him to start dancing up the walls like Fred Astaire.
It's nice to see them enjoying themselves.
Donna pulls out a list. They sit on the sofa.
So, listen. I got hold of the list of Meals on Wheels clients that Laura used to visit. It used to be 9. Now it's 8 since old Mr. Pendergast died.
What are you gonna do?
I told Norma I'd take over the deliveries tomorrow. I'll spend some time with everybody on her route.
She unfolds a small town map.
I put X's on all the addresses. One of these 8 people must have sent me that note. It means they know something. We just have to figure out who it was.
As Donna concentrates over her map, Maddie feels an odd, disquieting feeling coming over her. She tries to shake it off. Can't. Sound of Donna's voice grows fainter.
Laura never talked much about them. Guess we know by now that doesn't necessarily mean there wasn't anything weird about them.
Maddie turns slowly and looks into the alcove of the living room. Standing there, stock still, is Bob, the gray-haired man we've seen in Cooper's dream and Mrs. Palmer's vision. Maddie's frozen with fear. Donna doesn't immediately notice. Maddie starts to tremble, unable to speak. Bob doesn't move. He just looks at her. Donna finally notices her distress.
Maddie? Maddie!
Huh?
What is it? What's wrong?
Maddie just looks at her, looks back. Bob is gone.
Reading the performance indications that are given to Leland's character is very fascinating, and then kind of remembering how he pulled moments like this off, or like similar moments, like where he's dancing, like whether it's Sarah that he's dancing with, or he's becoming like progressively more and more frenetic and more like a whirligig. It's interesting just to see how in the script it was written in such a way. These guys would just say the right words to Ray Wise, and like knowing that he would carry it out. Like that's patently obvious by now.
Right.
I mean, he's the creepiest and most heartbreaking character in that show.
This whole Leland and Sarah going dancing makes me think of Firewalk with Me, where Donna Hayward comes to Laura's house, and she's like, "Oh, where's your parents? Oh, Fred and Ginger are out," which is like they're gone dancing. So there is a pattern of them going out dancing, and of course Leland likes to dance. So I mean, not needed, but it's still kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of neat that this is something that the writers had thought about before. Just you and me. There is no just
you and me.
There's no James there. He's not playing the guitar.
Yeah, so that must have been added in.
That was, I mean, this is a David Lynch episode, so I'm sure David Lynch was kind of like, you know what'd be cool? James sitting there singing to the girls.
Yeah, I mean, and
I think
it's way more frightening at the end.
Yeah.
That's like more of a jump scare, the way it's presented. Not even that scary. Kind of like Friday the 13th-ish.
Yes.
Where the killer's standing there, and then you look and he's gone, like he's a cartoon character. I like the way it presented itself on television.
Is there anything else we want to talk about this episode? I mean, I guess near the end we get to be at the Haywards, and we learn that Donna has another sister.
Alicia Witt.
Who was in season 3. The sister playing the piano.
It brings you in with a calmness, and then it gets really disturbing.
Yes.
That's what Lynch does a lot.
It's really kind of an important scene. You know, I didn't realize it till much later. I don't even think I acknowledged it when we were doing our episode guides and stuff in Wrapped in Plastic. The scene was scripted differently. You know, Lynch came in and he added the Gersten Hayward character into the scene. It wasn't ever going to be part of it. It was a brand new thing that Lynch brought in. And obviously he had worked with Alicia Witt before in Dune and knew what her talents were. And so he wanted, to have her participate in Twin Peaks. So he basically created this role, on the spot, essentially, for her. And there's a couple of interesting things that happen. One is the poem that she reads, which is all about Laura Palmer. And that is critical, too, because it's here that Lynch is sort of reintroducing the spirit of Laura into the story. And, it's something that Lynch never can quite shake. He wants to explore this character more. Obviously, he makes an entire film about her essentially a year later. This is where he is bringing her essence essentially back to the story. And it was never part of the original script. I don't think Frost was thinking that way, but Lynch certainly was. And he wanted to have Laura there again. And so he has Gersten recite this poem. It was Laura. It's an actually interesting poem, and if you just look at the poem by itself and read the lines of it, it's a pretty good poem, actually. And he also has her dressed for some bizarre reason. He has Gersten dressed with almost like a princess. She's got a wand with a star at the end, and she's got the tiara on, and she's got this dress. I think she says, I'm practicing for the play at school or whatever. I forget exactly what the excuse is for her to be dressed like that. But it's striking that she's dressed very similarly to Cheryl Lee as the Good Witch.
As the Good Witch.
Yeah.
Which, Lynch had essentially just finished making Wild at Heart, and then he went into this. So that imagery was really strong with him, and he almost puts that character back in to the story here through Gersten. In some ways, I theorize it would be fun to write, and I really don't mean to go way off on a tangent here, that Gersten's an imaginary character that no one sees. They don't even know she's never there. Obviously she comes back in season 3, but for that brief moment, she sort of appears. She's sort of a fantastical character. She appears with a poem and plays a little song, and it's so typically Lynchian that he would throw that in there. But obviously he wanted to reestablish Laura's presence, and he did it in that way. I think the whole scene is really fascinating.
It is.
Absolutely.
I love that this episode ends with her playing the piano too. Like, because most of the episodes don't end that way. I mean, most of
Laura's pictured generally.
Generally, I mean, there's a few here and there that end differently, but I thought it was fun that it ended with her playing the piano.
She's super gifted too, and I'm saying that as a pianist. Like, she's actually playing those pieces, and especially when she plays the Rondo Capriccioso by Mendelssohn. That's not an easy piece.
Alicia Witt was, an accomplished piano player, and at a very, very young age, I mean, she had, she was an accomplished performer, which is part of why she was cast as a very young actor. I don't know how old she was in Dune in 1984 1984, which would have been shooting in like 1983.
Was she Alia?
Yes, she's Alia, exactly. And
Okay,
she
wow.
was at that young age capable of memorizing her lines and giving a performance because she essentially was like a child prodigy or whatever, could play the piano and sing and do all those things.
Yeah.
And so Lynch was very aware of that, and that's he wanted to feature her again in Twin Peaks. It's unfortunate we didn't get to see something else happen with her.
Oh, I know.
Season 3, she has a very tragic outcome ultimately.
Do you think she died at the end? I mean, like we don't.
She doesn't. Well, we don't really know what happens to Gertrude.
Right.
The last time we see her in season 3 is she's behind the tree. She hears the gunshot. Stephen probably killing himself, and then she is just distraught and beside herself in stress. And I think that's the last time we see her. I don't think we see her again. The thing about this episode is there's so much expository dialogue in it because they really are trying to catch everyone back up if they hadn't seen it, in 4 months. Especially the scene where Albert has to lay the whole case out.
Yes.
We interviewed Miguel Ferrer about that, and he said that was one of the hardest things he had to do was, to just have these pages and pages of dialogue where he basically recaps the entire first season for everyone and where it's going to go. But there's a lot of that in this episode. There's a lot of, attempting to kind of get people to talk about what happened so they can get all the facts out there. I think a lot of that they ended up, cutting. It would just have been more expository dialogue.
Yeah.
The very end of the episode, Ronette is laying in the bed and her arms lift up as she is kind of reliving the murder.
I love that scene.
Yeah, all of that is fantastic. Really,
that's like a transcendent moment.
Yeah, it's really good.
John, you know more than I do, but I think this was being promoted as this is the episode you'll learn more about who the killer is, and I guess it ends with us seeing Bob killing Laura. I mean, some people said could he be saving her? I remember hearing somewhere where they thought maybe he was giving CPR or something, but there's no way.
What? Who would think Bob's saving her? That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
Bob saving anyone is weird.
There was a couple things that were happening at the time, and there was apparently, I forget if it was Lynch Frost that said this or if ABC said this, but they said, obviously over the summer of 1990, the question was who killed Laura Palmer, and we thought we were going to find out at the end of season 1, and we didn't, and so there was some expectation that we were going to find out in the season 2 premiere. We were going to finally find out who killed Laura Palmer. And I think there was some coy kind of, yes, we're going to show you who killed Laura Palmer and they do. They show us that Bob killed Laura Palmer. And again, as I said earlier, the new question became, well, who is Bob? Bob killed Laura Palmer, but the fact is Bob is someone else. 3 have seen him, yes, but not his body. And so that was the new mystery. And so they kind of pulled the rug out in a way, it was like, well, yeah, we told you who killed her, but we didn't really tell you who he is. And yes, that scene was interpreted in different ways at the time. And if you didn't have the context of the rest of the show to watch, when Bob kills her, he kind of looks up and he cries and screams and there was some interpretation by some critics at the time that he was agonizing over what he had done. And of course there could be an element of truth to that too once you find out that Bob is Leland. Tyler Walkley establishes they did not want to kill Laura Palmer. Bob wanted to possess Laura Palmer, and so in killing her she had essentially defeated him. So there's a lot of complexity there, but that last scene of Bob at the time had people really confused and wondering and maybe reading too much into it. Frank Silva, who was not an actor, really did a great job in that scene.
Yeah. And in retrospect, we know he was agonizing because it was Leland. So
it's complicated, though, isn't it, though? It's
the tears, Leland, we know it is complicated, but seeing that imagery before the whole mystery, I guess I could put myself in a position of seeing that for the first time and not understanding it. As someone who watched this 5 years ago and saw it for the first time, I just thought Bob is the killer. That's him killing her.
It's hard to remember back then when I first saw it. Actually, the more I think about it, I think he was called Killer Bob. Like, even back, I think even when the show premiered, I think, like, I guess the pick cards hadn't come out yet, right, John?
He wasn't. I don't think he was called Killer Bob at that point.
Okay.
I mean, in fact, this episode is really the episode where Bob gets introduced as a major player in the story. There was some confusion after this. Who is Bob? Really?
Right. We saw Bob in a dream, and we saw a vision from Sarah, and it was always a kind of a weird, like, who is this guy? And
the sketch the sketch is his.
The sketch hasn't come in yet. Right?
Oh yeah, that's true.
We're getting there.
We haven't got to the sketch yet.
Richie, do you have anything else to say about this episode?
Oh, no, I'm just kind of reliving it. I forgot what a slow burn this episode is. Like the slowest of burns.
Yeah.
Such a masterwork. But I really want to thank everybody for having me tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, John, and thank you
to Richie English.
And all these players did a fabulous job for this one. Amazing. I loved it all.
Yes, thank you so much, Francine and Sadie and Schaefer, for an incredible job. I mean, you guys always are so amazing, and I can't believe how good it is every time. And it's like, I just feel like I'm part of, like, listening to old-time radio or something. It's just so cool.
Yeah, in this episode alone, I mean, we got a lot. All right, so if you have any comments, questions, theories, or something we might have missed during today's show, give us an email at twinpeaksunwrapped@gmail.com. You can like us in the old Facebook. You can tweet us in the old Twitter at Twin Peaks Unwrapped. Also, give us a 5-star review on iTunes. That always helps us be more visible on that platform. But we're also on Google Play. We're on Spotify and all your favorite podcast catchers out there. But with all that being said, before we go, one big, gigantic thank you to everybody who has pre-ordered our book. It's coming out in April. Your support means the world to us. And if you pre-ordered, the special preview podcast is out in the wild for all you pre-order people.
You pre-order now, and you instantly get the podcast, which is almost an hour long. It's like 45 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little 10 interviews we've done, like little excerpts, and you can't beat Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah.
To be able to for us to sit down and talk with him, you get that just by pre-ordering. So it's almost like, you get something instantly. You get something for your money before the book is even out.
It's our thank you to you, really, because without you pre-ordering this book and hitting our goal of 200 pre-orders, it would be more of a struggle to get this book out.
It really would. We're self-publishing. I mean, this is like, we don't have a big corporation that is paying for the printing of this book. So it really is, it's like grassroots, really.
Yeah.
It really comes down to the community supporting us that we're even able to put out this book. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much.